the timing of this podcast ended up being, I'm happy that you were still able to come on despite the news dropping within 24 hours of us recording this. Tyler Herro agrees to an extension, 4 years, $130 million, $120 million guaranteed. Thoughts on the extension? Are you surprised it got done? What did you think about the reaction from people to him getting that much money? Just general impressions of it.
So my thing is, at this point, I feel like salaries are so inflated that it's kind of hard to like properly assess if someone got too much, too little, if they were deserving or not. I wasn't surprised that it got done, nor though was I surprised about the reaction. I even tweeted like, I think as soon as it happened, I said something like, "Oh, and here goes like NBA Twitter," because I knew everyone was gonna have a field day. One of my friends messaged me today and was like, I was clowning him about Blake because he's a Celtics fan, Blake going to Boston. And he was like, "I'm sorry, you have no room to speak. You guys just extended Tyler for how much?" And I'm like, don't make that comparison. I'm not mad about it, if only for the fact that I think this is a huge confidence boost in him. I feel like he hasn't, not that he's ever said this, but there's parts of me that felt like he didn't necessarily feel like he was fully believed in by the organization. And part of that, I think, was because maybe he wanted to start and wasn't. But this to me shows that the front office is, like, at least for now, fully confident in him. And I think that's going to do a lot for him on the court, but also just for his relationship with the organization. So I personally don't really have a problem with it.
I'm with you, and I do think it's hard to. We saw this with the CJ McCollum extension. I think we saw it when RJ Barrett just got his extension. The cap is going up, and so I don't know what the exact numbers are going to be like per year for him, but 23% of the salary cap for Tyler Herro, who, if you want him to be your fourth best player on a really good team, it's just perfectly fine to me. Do I think they got a steal? He has to hit his highest end outcome for that to happen, but I don't think it's like detrimental the way people were sort of framing it as, and I think it's good. Too often, and I'm guilty of doing this too, we say, well, it's restricted free agency, just wait so that you keep your flexibility and figure it out. And I do think it's important to have sometimes have the better relationship to the player, rather than the Heat did it with Bam Adebayo, where it was, no, we're not going to conserve cap space by not extending Bam Adebayo because maybe Giannis gives us a meeting a couple of years from now. And so I didn't have a huge issue with it. I don't know. I think it's very much TBD on the value of it, but the number I just didn't get sticker shock from.
I think people are falling into this really bad habit of comparing players and their contracts now to like contracts even from 2-3 years ago. And it doesn't seem like it would be a huge jump, but it has become that, to your point. I mean, everything is going up, and it's going up by quite an amount, I feel like, every season. So what I keep seeing is just like, I can't even think of who they were comparing him to, but it's just looking at contracts that are older to now. And I'm like, this is apples and oranges. Like, I understand that it looks a little bit high and maybe like glaring at first, but if you think about it within the scope of the larger league right now, I don't think it's that big of a deal. And again, like I said, to me, I would rather him feel confident in himself and supported by the organization right now than worry about numbers.
And the other thing is just like for a team like the Heat where they're not good. First of all, we just talked about off air, should have recorded that, how free agency has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's people get extended and then traded, or you draft a star. Free agency isn't what it was. But for a team like the Heat, even if you think they can bag a free agent, they're just not going to have money to spend. And so someone like Tyler Herro, who's as good, is actually worth more to them than a team that's not in the same position as the Heat.
Yeah, totally. And I think they like knowing that guys are fully committed. They like knowing that guys understand their system and will work hard to become what they need to be. And a bigger name, that doesn't always mean that the fit is going to be right. And I know people come after me all the time about like kind of my takes on the culture and the fit, but it's true. With the Heat in particular, a lot of that stuff matters more than X's and O's because that stuff can be taught. I'm not saying that guys can be given talent that they don't have, but in terms of figuring out the system and kind of what their roles are, that's not the hard part. I think it's kind of fitting into the culture. And Jimmy and him had kind of a bumpy road on a personal level for a little bit there. They got over that. So now to me, I'm happy about this because Tyler now can move forward with Bam as kind of the future if they are going to keep him around and be confident in himself in that.
So what are you looking to see from him now that he has this deal? Is there any area you would like to see him improve upon? I think it's important to note that he's come a long way as a variable off the dribble shot maker, and even with his passing, or aside from just, I think we could talk about his defense if you're looking for improvement. But the other thing I sort of posed to you as the back end of this is it maybe just a matter of him streamlining his offensive game a little bit more to where he's more comfortable being like the third option on offense in those lineups and leaning into look what he can do if he's flying around screens and shooting off the catch.
Honestly, I think for me, I mean, a lot of things are important because I do want him to be obviously as well rounded as possible, but I just want his playmaking skills to continue to improve. I think we've already seen it, but I think with a team like the Heat, especially with this roster, I feel like there's a very high basketball IQ just across the board. And I think that the more he works on that, the better he'll be. Just because, Spo likes to play with lineups. I am hoping that injuries won't plague us the way they did, but to be honest, it kind of just seems like part of the Heat's identity at this point. So when that happens,
Right.
he needs to be able to kind of not only fill a different role himself, but with the guys around him, know what to do with them. So I just want kind of his basketball IQ and his playmaking to pick up. I think he's gotten stronger on defense. I think he's working on his body, which will help a lot on both ends of the floor. I really want him to stay healthy as well. And I know that's easier said than done. And it's not necessarily a fault of his. But that's the one thing that I think I just want to make sure that he's able to stay healthy, because it's kind of like the way he's playing makes him even more susceptible, I think, to certain injuries that he's had in the past. But the flip side of that is the fact that he is putting on weight, I think will help keep him a little bit healthier. At least I hope so.
And I've also wondered if that would like sort of help him kind of increase the frequency with which he gets to the rim, maybe that he's getting to the foul line, which is there's a tug of war there where it'd be great if he could do that as part of his game. Because I do think the Heat need that from the perimeter outside of Jimmy Butler, and maybe you get that from Oladipo, but it's also Herro's had like a bunch of just stuff crop up in the past injury wise. Do you really want him, trying to draw more contact? But I think him getting stronger helps either way in that regard.